The Old West, a time of cowboys and outlaws, vast untamed landscapes, and a sense of freedom that beckoned to many, also harbors its share of enigmas. Beneath the romanticized tales of saloons and shootouts lie mysteries that remain unresolved to this day. These tales of intrigue and bewilderment challenge historians and enthusiasts alike, weaving a tapestry of the unknown that continues to captivate our imaginations. Join us as we delve into 10 unsolved mysteries from the Old West, where the line between myth and reality blurs, and the past whispers secrets that have yet to be uncovered. Butch Cassidy. The most well-known version of this tale was immortalized in the film featuring Paul Newman and Robert Redford as the notorious Outlaws. According to that account and other narratives, the duo fled the United States for Bolivia when the pressure from their 1890s robbery spree became overwhelming. Allegedly, it was in Bolivia that they met their end in a shootout. However, that's not the definitive conclusion. Cassidy's sister Lula claimed she had heard from several of his acquaintances who encountered him well after his supposed death in 1908, including herself. In 1925, Cassidy reportedly attended a family reunion that included Lula, their brothers, and father. Historical researchers have uncovered documents indicating that the confrontation with Bolivian authorities occurred while Cassidy and his gang were sorting through the spoils of a payroll heist in a house. Although 2 men were killed, there's speculation that neither was definitively identified as Cassidy or the Sundance Kid. Some suggest Cassidy might have shot his longtime partner rather than see them imprisoned. Other narratives propose that he escaped, abandoned his criminal activities, and lived for decades in Paraguay, Chile, or Spokane, Washington. This theory gained some support from Bolivian President René Barrientos's research, which concluded that the shootout story was entirely fabricated. The Pinkerton Detective Agency, which continued to search for the Outlaws well beyond 1908, believed they were killed in Uruguay. Lula maintained that Cassidy ultimately died of pneumonia in Washington in 1930. Apache Chief Cochise. Chief Cochise is one of the most recognizable figures in the conflict between Native Americans and European settlers pushing westward. Despite his prominence, much about him remains a mystery. Very little is known about Cochise's early life before the mid-19th century, when he emerged as the leader of the Chiricahua Apaches in northern Mexico and southern Arizona. Years of raids and skirmishes between the Apaches and settlers eventually led to the creation of a reservation on the southeastern edge of their territory. Cochise passed away in 1874, just 2 years after the establishment of a peace he had rarely experienced. His traditional burial site, located somewhere in the Dragoon Mountains, was known only to a select few of his contemporaries who never revealed its location. Many legends surround the burial of this great leader. One story claims that Cochise's dog and horse were shot and buried with him to prevent the animals from serving as a public reminder of him and his death. The Lost Cement Mine. While accounts vary on how exactly the lost cement mine was discovered, they all agree on one thing: the site was rich with gold. One version, recorded in 1879, claims that 2 men traveling to California in 1857 discovered the mine. They separated from their caravan, rested by a stream, and noticed an abundance of gold. One man, skeptical of the find, carried about 5 kilograms with him. By the time he reached California, he had fallen gravely ill and used the gold and a map to pay for his treatment. Another account by Mark Twain tells a different story. He wrote that 3 German brothers, hiding in the mountains to escape an attack on their caravan, stumbled upon the gold. Regardless of the origin story, the lost cement mine became legendary, drawing countless prospectors to the area. There are records of a Dr. Randall finding gold-rich red rock in the vicinity. In 1869, 2 men arrived in Stockton, California, resupplied, and headed back to the wilderness. Between 1869 and 1877, they returned annually with substantial amounts of gold. In the fall of 1877, one of them, on his deathbed, confided an incredible story to a priest. He revealed that he and his partner had been mining around Mammoth Peak, then known as Pumice Mountain, and had unearthed around $400,000 worth of gold over the years. He did not disclose the exact location, only that they had concealed their spot from other prospectors. Although it may sound like a fairy tale today, the search for the lost cement mine led to significant gold discoveries in Bodie, California, totaling over 28,000 kilograms. Jean-Baptiste. In 1862, Brigham Young and his followers faced a troubling dilemma. They discovered that Jean-Baptiste, the gravedigger, was also a grave robber. The residents of Salt Lake City had to decide how to handle a man guilty of such a heinous crime. In his home, they found hundreds of sets of clothing taken from the bodies he had buried. Young assured his congregation that those who had been buried unclothed by Baptiste would be fully dressed during their resurrection. Baptiste's trial was straightforward. He was ultimately banished to a desolate island in the middle of the Great Salt Lake, escorted by several men who had sworn not to kill him on the journey. Despite the lake being extremely low, Baptiste, who couldn't swim, was effectively imprisoned on the island, or so it seemed. 3 weeks later, the cattle owners who visited the island to check on Baptiste and their herd found him gone. The only signs of his presence were a damaged shack and a slaughtered calf. Jean-Baptiste was never seen again. Several theories have been proposed regarding what really happened to Jean-Baptiste. One theory suggests he died while attempting to escape, supported by the discovery of a human skull near the mouth of the Jordan River, and later a skeleton still wearing a ball and chain. However, it remains unclear if Baptiste was actually wearing a ball and chain when he was left on the island. Another theory posits that Baptiste constructed a raft from pieces of his shelter and the cowhide from the animal he slaughtered, and successfully made it to shore. Some speculate that he boarded a train to California, while others believe he found refuge in mining towns. Later reports, dating well after his exile, claim that Baptiste had his ears cut off and his face marked with the words, "branded for robbing the dead." The accuracy of these claims remains as mysterious as his ultimate fate: Tom Horn and the death of Willie Nickel. In 1980, Steve McQueen brought the story of Tom Horn to life in his movie of the same name. Horn was a complex figure, embodying both outlaw and lawman qualities. By the 1890s, the once profitable cattle ranching industry was suffering. The market had become oversaturated, and ranchers exacerbated the issue by purchasing more cattle, worsening their financial woes. Unwilling to take responsibility for their predicament, the ranchers blamed cattle rustlers and hired men like Tom Horn to address the issue. Horn undoubtedly dealt with rustlers, but the exact number of his actions remains unclear. Horn was ultimately executed for the murder of Willie Nickel, a crime he likely did not commit. No one could definitively prove Tom Horn's innocence or guilt, and the identity of the person who fired the shots that ended the life of 14-year-old Willie Nickel remains unknown. Following Willie Nickel's death, Horn's reputation caught the attention of United States Marshal Joe LaForce. LaForce was tasked with investigating the incident and met with Horn under the guise of seeking help to hunt cattle rustlers. Reportedly intoxicated and boastful, Horn allegedly made some statements that implicated him in the shooting. This was sufficient to bring him to trial. Despite the defense's argument that all evidence was circumstantial, Horn was found guilty and was executed on November 20th, 1903. 90 years later, the case was re-examined in a mock trial, which suggested that Horn was unlikely to have been involved in the killing. The precise details of Willie Nickel's fate remain unclear, but it is suspected that the incident was related to a long-standing feud involving the Nickel family and their neighbors, Albert and Henry Fountain. Albert Fountain was a well-educated man with a diverse and distinguished career. A former Union Army soldier, he later served as a Texas state senator. Educated at Columbia College in New York, Fountain also held positions as a judge, lawman, lieutenant governor of Texas, and journalist. Throughout his career, Fountain inevitably made many enemies due to his firm stance on various issues. In February 1896, Fountain vanished while traveling from Lincoln, New Mexico, to Mesilla with his 8-year-old son, Henry. Fountain had been involved in prosecuting cattle rustlers, a role that put him at significant risk. Despite his friends' concerns for his safety, Fountain himself remained untroubled. A mail carrier reported seeing Fountain and his son being followed by a group of riders, but knew nothing more. No physical traces of Fountain or his son were ever found, although his wagon was recovered along with a blood-stained handkerchief. The mysterious disappearance of Albert Fountain and his son prompted numerous speculations. Despite the intense public interest and various theories, no charges were ever brought. Some believed that associates of the cattle rustlers were responsible, while others suspected the infamous outlaw Blackjack Ketchum. Another theory implicated Oliver Lee, a part-time United States Marshal and land developer. Lee was eventually tried and acquitted for the disappearance of Henry Fountain, but many questions remained unanswered. The case of Albert Fountain's disappearance highlights the turbulent and often lawless nature of the Old West. Fountain's disappearance remains one of the enduring mysteries of the era, reflecting the complexities and dangers faced by those who stood against corruption and crime. Henry Plummer's gold. In 1863, the concept of a background check did not exist. If it had, the town of Bannock, Montana, might have reconsidered electing Henry Plummer as their sheriff. Plummer had a notorious past, including being charged with murder, a conviction he was fleeing when he arrived in Bannock. Wasting no time in his new role, Plummer appointed several of his outlaw associates as deputies. Unfortunately, his only honest deputy, whom he had inherited, met with an untimely demise under suspicious circumstances involving a hail of bullets just a month later. Shortly before settling in Bannock, Plummer married Electa Bryan. Despite his marriage, he continued his dubious activities, using his position as sheriff to confiscate gold from local miners. Plummer had a routine. Once he had accumulated as much gold as a mule could carry, he would transport it to a secret location for safekeeping. The exact whereabouts of his hidden treasures remain a mystery. Rumors suggest that Plummer's stash could be around $200,000 in gold near Birdtail Rock. Electa Bryan, his wife, revealed that another portion of his fortune was hidden along a creek flowing into the Sun River. Additionally, there was talk of $50,000 from a stagecoach robbery buried somewhere along Cottonwood Creek, and $300,000 in gold near Cascade. Despite these tales, none of the treasure was ever found. Plummer's tenure as sheriff lasted only about a year before town vigilantes targeted him and his outlaw deputies, leading to their demise. Plummer himself was executed on January 10, 1864. The secrets of the treasure's location died with him, adding another layer to the legend of Henry Plummer. Analyzing Plummer's story provides insight into the lawlessness of the Old West, where outlaws often operated on both sides of the law. The enduring mystery of Plummer's hidden treasure reflects the allure and danger of the era, where fortunes could be made and lost amid a backdrop of shifting loyalties and fragile justice. Quijo, renegade Indian outlaw or scapegoat. Quijo remains a mysterious figure, often portrayed alternately as a serial killer, boogeyman, and scapegoat. Details about his early life and overall existence are sparse. Born in the 1880s to a Native American mother and an unidentified father, his mixed heritage marked him as an outsider from the start. His first alleged act of violence occurred when he reportedly killed his brother, Avote, in retaliation for murdering another man. Quejo then left his Colorado home and journeyed to Las Vegas around 1910, a burgeoning frontier town at the time. It was here that he became ensnared by alcohol, a factor that soon intertwined his name with tales used to frighten children and link him to unsolved murders. Within a few years, any unexplained death in the mining community was attributed to Quejo. A substantial bounty of $2,000 was placed on his head, prompting him to retreat from public view. In February 1940, a mummified body was discovered in a cave near Hoover Dam. Identified by its distinctive double row of teeth, the remains were declared to be Quejo's. His corpse became a macabre exhibit, featured prominently in a replica of his cave created by the Las Vegas Elks. Over time, the remains were stolen, dispersed, and eventually recovered. Quejo's final resting place remains a subject of debate, mirroring the uncertainty surrounding his life and alleged crimes. Historians and researchers continue to ponder whether Quejo was truly guilty of the crimes attributed to him, unfairly accused, or perhaps a combination of both. His enigmatic story endures as a reflection of the myths and realities intertwined in the history of the American West. Pancho Villa's body parts. Francisco Villa, famously known as Pancho Villa, ascended from his origins as a bandit and outlaw to become a revered military leader during the tumultuous Mexican Revolution. By the end of his life, he had achieved widespread notoriety across Mexico. Having retired from both his outlaw activities and military career by 1923, Villa's presence continued to concern his successors, even in his role as a retired rancher. Tragically, Villa was assassinated, and he was laid to rest in Chihuahua, Mexico, at Hidalgo del Parral. However, 3 years later, his tomb was violated, and his body was gruesomely decapitated. The whereabouts of his head remain a mystery to this day, surrounded by numerous tales and speculations. Villa's granddaughter has recounted that more than just his head was missing when his remains were disturbed for relocation to Mexico's Revolution Monument in 1976. Allegedly, only a few bones remained in the grave. Some have proposed that the bones found may not have belonged to Villa at all. According to speculation, Villa's widow orchestrated the removal of the rest of his body after the theft of his head. In its place, the body of an unidentified woman, reportedly decapitated and anonymously buried in Parral, was placed as a decoy to deter further grave desecration attempts. The fate of Villa's remains continues to be a subject of intrigue and controversy. Reports have surfaced claiming that his trigger finger was allegedly kept for sale at a pawn shop in El Paso, with a price tag of $9,500. Additionally, there are rumors that Villa's head was acquired by Yale University's secretive Skull and Bones Society. Despite these claims, verifying the authenticity of these remains as belonging to Pancho Villa remains uncertain and unlikely. The mystery surrounding Villa's final resting place underscores the complexities and legends that have surrounded his legacy long after his death. Lost Ship of the Desert. In an unexpected twist of historical lore, the Colorado Desert became the subject of rumors about a lost Spanish galleon during the 1870s. According to accounts from the Los Angeles Star, a treasure seeker claimed to have finally discovered the elusive ship in November 1870. Charlie Klusker, another explorer, later asserted finding an exceptionally well-preserved Spanish galleon on December 1st. Despite these claims, no tangible evidence was ever recovered from their desert expeditions. The legend persisted that the ship was a pirate vessel, carrying a valuable treasure still untouched on board. While the notion may seem fantastical, there remains a faint possibility of truth in the tale. The Salton Sink, a vast geological depression formed millions of years ago in the Colorado Desert, has periodically filled with water, at times forming a lake. This geological phenomenon is evidenced by oyster beds discovered high in the San Felipe Mountains, suggesting past flooding events. Historical speculation posits that the alleged pirate ship could have navigated up the Gulf of California before running aground in the desert region. If true, the crew would have perished, leaving the galleon to weather the harsh desert elements. The veracity of these claims continues to be debated among historians. Despite skepticism, the multitude of reports detailing a lost desert ship continues to captivate imaginations and fuel curiosity about potential buried treasures hidden in the arid expanses of the Colorado Desert. As we delve into these intriguing tales from the frontier, one thing remains clear. The Wild West was a landscape of untamed adventure and enigmatic stories that continue to fascinate us today. From lost treasures to elusive outlaws and mysterious disappearances, these mysteries remind us of the enduring allure of the Old West. As new clues emerge and old legends are revisited, the quest to unravel these mysteries persists. Subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories and explore the secrets that still linger beneath the dust of history.